Hello, in this video I'd like to go through some tips and techniques for the pre, during, post PDP lesson planning framework. So you can find more tips and suggestions, especially things related to writing objectives and so on my website. In this video, we're going to go through a quick review of PDP and some tips for choosing a text, and then also more tips and ideas for materials and activities for your lessons. Okay, so let's get started. So, quick review of PDP. So remember, this is for listening and reading skills, and this framework is focused on checking comprehension, so scaffolding and preparing for comprehension, and then going through different types of comprehension activities. So you can see the steps of the lesson here. Around about 3 steps in the pre-stage, we want to do things like set the context, get interest, warm-up questions, maybe discussion. Maybe that's for, older learners. You might have some kind of discussion questions. And you may also want to pre-teach vocabulary and also perhaps predict going into the during stage. Now, these are just suggestions. Don't look at this and feel like you have to do exactly these 3 steps, but these are just some ideas of the kind of things that you should be doing in the pre-stage. Now, in the during stage, we suggest about 4 steps for the during stage. At the beginning, students listen or read and do something, perhaps something general or easy, related to the gist or the general meaning of the text. And then in steps 5 and 6, you can start to get more detailed with different types of activities, different types of materials, focusing on different aspects of the text. And then the final during step, this step should be the most comprehensive. Okay, so perhaps something like summarizing, evaluating, creating, analyzing, or applying the information. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples of those in this video. So the objective of the lesson is actually step 7 here, right? So the objective is the end of the during stage. So here you want students to show as much comprehension, complete comprehension as possible. The post activity in step 8 is just a little extra extension activity, just to extend the topic or the language a little bit more. So there's a note at the bottom here. Listen or read the full text about 3 times. Okay, so usually steps 4, 5, and 6, we would let students listen or read because we are scaffolding comprehension, right? So that means not just listening one time. Each time we read or listen, we have different tasks, and we're hoping to improve the student's comprehension each time. Okay. Now, I often get this question, how to differentiate the pre, during, and post stages. What kind of activities? How do we know if something should be pre or during? So have a look at these questions. Question 1, do you like apples? Now, students can answer this without comprehending the text. Okay, students can answer this from their own personal opinion or experience. So that means it is a pre or a post question. Okay, this question does not check comprehension. Now look at question 2. Does Tom in the story like apples? Now, in order to answer this question, students must comprehend the text. Okay, the answer to this question is in the text. So that means this is a during stage question. So any question or any type of activity that requires students to understand the text, the content of the text, whether it's give opinions about the text, whether it's summarizing the text, whether it's even, role-playing an interview using characters from the text, this could also count as a during stage because it shows comprehension of the text. Okay, so I hope that clears that up. Now, let's go over some quick tips for choosing your listening or reading text. So, for listening, around about 3 to 4 minutes video or audio file. A little bit less than 3 minutes is fine. 4 minutes is a little bit long, but that could be okay. So around about 3 minutes is best. For a reading, around about 1 page of text. Now, of course, this depends on pictures and, the size of the text, the density of the text, how much information is in it. But approximately 1 page is fine, right? We don't want to be giving 10 pages, and also we don't want to be giving 1 paragraph. So, something that students can comfortably read within a few minutes. So there should be enough information and content in the text for comprehension activities. So text that has clear information, clear content that we can use for checking is going to be a lot more easier for using for PDP. Some examples of texts that are not suitable are things like a trailer for a film, okay, often doesn't have enough language, it's more visual. A clip from a TV show can be okay, but it's sometimes a bit challenging because the content of what they're saying requires an understanding of the characters, the setting, the context, the story that happens before and after the clip. So just taking a random 3 minutes from a TV show can be a little bit challenging. The other one that can be challenging is pop songs, okay? It is possible, but often pop songs, or most kind of songs, the lyrics just don't mean anything. If you look at the lyrics, they have no meaning. There's no beginning, middle, and end. There's no real points. Modern pop music the lyrics are meaningless. Okay, and one more tip is trying to use clips from animated movies like Frozen and Shrek for children. Now remember, animated movies are made for education, they're not made for EFL students. So if you try to use a native English movie like Frozen in an EFL lesson for young learners, visually they might enjoy it, but the content of the language is probably going to be too difficult. Those animated shows often have jokes for the parents, so yes, not always suitable for EFL. Okay. So yeah, not too fast and not too dense with information. This is why animated movies for children are generally not good for EFL lessons. So not too many difficult idioms, jokes, or slang terms. Now, as I mentioned about TV series, especially if we take comedies, it is possible to use these in PDP, but sometimes or often there are too many jokes that require cultural understanding or understanding of puns or slang or idioms, and this kind of thing can just be too difficult for EFL students. Even intermediate or advanced students may not understand all of the idioms and the jokes in native English comedies, so just be careful with that kind of thing. So, authentic text for upper intermediate to advanced level is good. So, TED Talks, you can find TED Talks that are very short, around about 3 minutes. Those can be good. Travel vlogs, okay, so short kind of travel videos explaining a location or a restaurant or a museum or a city. Those things can be good because they have lots of good content. Magazine articles can be good on any topic. Magazine articles are obviously giving information, so that can be good. And lifestyle articles, okay, or even pages from websites, things like related to health or eating or lifestyle, okay? These things can be good because they have lots of content. Now, for easier graded texts for lower intermediate to beginner students, things like songs, okay, very simple songs for young learners that have repeated expressions and phrases and vocabulary. Short, simple stories can be good. Simple reading texts and videos for children, okay? So, but just be aware of the content of the video. Just really analyze the language and try to pay attention to what kind of expressions and phrases are in the videos. Okay, choose a text that is interesting and useful. Okay, think about what you're interested in. Think about types of things that would be interesting for a range of different learners. Okay, and the final tip, as I mentioned, pop songs can be difficult. Children's animations, I mean the kind of movies that we see in the cinema like Frozen and Shrek, those things can be difficult. But short animations that are actually made for children to understand can be good. Okay, movie clips, as I mentioned, can be difficult. TV clips as well. Comedy TV shows can be difficult. So be careful with figurative language. A lot of these things have jokes and slang that is quite difficult for EFL students. Now, how to write a student learning objective for PDP. So this is how we write the objective. Students will be able to comprehend the story, video, presentation, article, or whatever it is, and then maybe give the title of the story or the video or the article. And then the next part, we have a few options here. Right, so look at these 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1, by drilling. Is this a good objective for a comprehension lesson? No, because this is controlled speaking practice. Okay, number 2, by doing various activities. Well, that's not a clear objective, is it? We don't know what the activities are if you just put by doing various activities. So I would suggest number 3 and number 4, try to be specific about how you are going to check. So number 3, by completing a graphic organizer, showing the timeline of the story. This is specific. It clearly explains what students are going to be doing, what type of comprehension checking material we are using. Number 4, by choosing which place they would like to visit, giving 5 reasons for their choice. Now, this is for perhaps a travel video or an article about travel. Students are going to choose one of the places in the video or the article and give reasons for their choice, okay, using the content of the text. Now, this could be quite good objective because students are giving an opinion, they're actually applying the information to choose where they want to visit, and they're giving reasons from the text. So you can see an example SLO at the bottom here. Students will be able to comprehend the TED Talk, Tips to Have a Better Life, by explaining how they will change their life according to the information in the TED Talk. Okay, so they watch the TED Talk about how to have a better life, and then they apply that information to their own life and talk about what they have learned from the video and how they're going to use that information. So that is an example of a good objective because it's using the information. It's an authentic task because we watch these TED Talks to get information to change our life or to become better people, right? So we're actually using the information for the purpose it was intended. So those are a couple of examples, and you can find more examples on my website. Now, let's have a start looking at more examples of steps and activities now. So we have a reading text or a listening text, and here are 3 examples of activities. So the first one, we have match the word and the definition. So we have a list of words and a list of definitions, and then we have a fill in the blanks at the bottom of the worksheet. The next one, we have a fill in the blanks with the listening. Okay, so this could be the lyrics of a song, for example, and students have to listen and fill in the blanks. And then the third example here is a true or false or OX quiz to check comprehension of the listening or reading text. Now, have a look at these materials. Look at the 3 worksheets. Does this look like an interesting lesson? To be honest, I mean, it's okay. It's not the worst, but it's not very exciting. In terms of materials, the 3 worksheets look very similar. It's all checking through text, right? And if you used these with a reading text, then students are reading and reading and reading and reading. They're reading with the text and reading with the fill in the blanks and reading with the true or false questions. So there's not a lot of variety in this lesson, okay? The activities are all checking through text. So in this video, I'm going to give you more variety, more different ideas of different things you can do rather than just fill in the blanks or true or false, right? Try to be more creative in the types of activities that you choose. So one suggestion is to think about multiple intelligences. There are many different multiple intelligences. We have kinesthetic, interpersonal, kind of, group activities and discussions and debates. We have linguistic, logical, mathematical, naturalistic, intrapersonal about ourselves, visual, and musical. Now, I think always consider multiple intelligences when it comes to choosing activities and creating materials. Try to have variety, okay? If every activity is just students work by themselves with a worksheet, you're not including multiple intelligences. So think about visual materials, think about group activities. Even with a PDP comprehension lesson, we can have group activities. Students can discuss, we can do jigsaw reading, we can have roles and debate about the content. Think about logical puzzles or kinesthetic or even musical, okay? So try to have some variety in the types of materials and activities. The next tip here is related to holistic learning. Now, holistic learning includes all aspects of our brain, okay? So there's this kind of idea that we have left brain and right brain and they have different functions. It's not actually true that we have two sides of our brain, but the concept or this idea is actually quite interesting. So as people, we have a variety of different aspects, okay? So if we look here, we've got on the left side, we've got logical, analytical, fact-based, quantitative, organized, sequential, planned, and detailed, okay? On the right side, we have holistic, intuitive, integrating, synthesizing, okay? The right side is more creative and human. The left side is more analytical and robotic, okay? On the right side, we've got interpersonal, feeling, kinesthetic, emotional, okay? So when you're thinking about lessons in general, we need to have kind of analyzing and facts and logic, but we also have the emotional side, the interpersonal side, the human side of ourselves, okay? So try to kind of appeal to both of these sides of us as humans. Okay, and the next suggestion is about Bloom's taxonomy. This is one of my favorite frameworks or concepts related to education. We start at the bottom with remembering basic facts and understanding basic facts. Then we can apply the information, so using things that we learned in different ways. We can analyze information, okay, comparing, contrasting, differentiating. And as we go up, it becomes more and more challenging. Okay, so applying and analyzing, and then the top levels are evaluating and creating. So especially with PDP, keep this in mind, okay? At the beginning of the lesson, we focus on the bottom stages of the pyramid. Towards the end of the during stage, we should be trying to hit, at least the top 3 levels, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, okay? There are many different ways that you can do this to try to get to the top levels, depending on what kind of text you have, okay? So if it's a story, you may analyze the characters and create a new ending, okay? If it's some kind of review or travel information, you could evaluate, okay? You could be choosing and deciding where you want to visit or, which places you would like to see, okay? So do aim for the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and this helps us to organize the during stage. Beginning of the during stage is at the bottom, end of the during stage is at the top. Now, another thing to consider is reading strategies. So have a look at these reading strategies. We have predict, visualize, question, connect, identify, infer, and evaluate. Now, I like this list of 7 here on the left But if you look at reading strategies online, you will find different ideas and different categories and classifications of reading strategies. But I think this list of 7 here is good. If you need to pause the video to have a read, please pause the video. But these can be very useful for creating activities and materials. Each of these is a very different way of approaching comprehension. And these are often called reading strategies, but have a look at these. Which of these could be used for listening? Pause the video if you like to have a look. So have a look at these 7 reading strategies. Which of these could be used for listening? Okay, it's a trick question because the answer is all of them. All of these reading strategies can be applied in a listening lesson. We often don't talk about listening strategies. It's more common to talk about reading strategies, but all of these different strategies can be applied in a listening lesson. So think about things like inferring and connecting and visualizing and predicting, okay? Use these ideas, can be very useful in your lesson planning. Okay, so let's go through some more tips now. This is about how to set the context at the start of a lesson. So this is actually the pre-stage, okay? Now, I've got a couple examples here because this idea of context and setting the context can sometimes be a bit challenging to understand. But the context is like the general topic or the overall topic or even kind of related topics that are around your text. So have a look at these examples. The first one is perhaps a short story about Aladdin. So what kind of things could we do to help set the context before we read about Aladdin? I've got some examples here. We've got magic. Okay, so Aladdin is about magic. That's part of the story. We have wishes. Okay, so the lamp and the genie are about wishes. So we could start the lesson focusing on wishes and think, if you had a wish, what would you ask for? The next one is fairy tale, right? Aladdin is a type of fairy tale. So you could start with this idea of fairy tales and, related fairy tales like Cinderella and in Korea, Gongji and Pachi, right? So you could start with this idea of fairy tales, talk about fairy tales that you know and what kind of common things do we see in fairy tales. And the last one is just a kind of practical one, Disney. Of course, many people know Aladdin through Disney, so you could start with, Disney characters, Disney princesses and things like that. Now, just to kind of mention one thing, the context doesn't mean you have to reveal the content of the story. So if we start with magic or wishes or fairy tale or Disney, that doesn't mean you have to tell them about Aladdin and tell them everything about the story straight away, right? You start by focusing on the context or the topic and just focus on that. And then when you introduce the text, students find out the content of the story. Okay, so if we start with Disney, for example, we might start with a whole range of Disney characters and Disney movies, Disney princesses and things like that. But we wouldn't tell the students about Aladdin before we introduce the text. And it's the same with fairy tale, right? You might start with general fairy tales that students know, just listing various fairy tales. You don't have to reveal too much information. The next one here is about the lost art of letter writing. This is actually a short TED Talk. And for this one, some contexts I chose are email writing. Okay, so writing emails, you could have discussion questions about writing emails. How often do you send emails and things like that before you go into the video. Another one context is social media addiction. Okay, so everybody now is just using social media and we're not writing letters anymore. Okay, so the idea here is that you start with one of these topics about email or social media, and then you kind of get their interest in this kind of broad topic, and then you introduce the text. So final tip, don't reveal too much about the text in the pre-stage. You don't want to give away too much information about the text because that should come from comprehension in the during stage. Okay, so now we're still in the pre-stage. How to review vocabulary. Now, I often see this thing of match the word with the definition. This is okay, it's not terrible, but it's not always the best way to review Lexis. To be honest, we don't really learn vocabulary through definitions, written definitions, right? We learn vocabulary by hearing, by examples, by hearing the words in sentences and diagrams, maybe with visual support. So just think about the way that we learn vocabulary is not usually by matching with definitions. It's kind of, that seems like an inauthentic way to learn vocabulary. So instead, use example sentences that contain the word. So this means put the word in context of a sentence. We can use pictures and visual examples. Okay, images and diagrams and so on. We can use synonyms and antonyms. Now, this is very useful. We can use similar words for checking, and we can also use opposite words for checking. This can be very good for certain types of words. We can use miming and TPR. Again, this is good for certain types of words or expressions. And also think about checking questions with pictures and mimes and so on. So I would suggest try to use a variety of different ways to review and teach and check vocabulary and Lexis, okay? Some words might be better with pictures, some words might be better with miming, some words might work better with example sentences or synonyms, right? So you don't have to teach all the vocabulary in the same way. Different types of vocabulary matches well with different ways of teaching. So here are some examples. Here we have an example sentence. Jane was nervous about the exam. Okay, so that's an example sentence with the word in context. Now we have some images, A, B, C. So which picture is nervous? Is it A or B or C? The answer is B. Good. And now checking with antonyms. What is the opposite of nervous? Number 1, confident. Number 2, terrified. Number 3, difficult. What is the opposite? Okay, the answer is confident. Okay, this is just a quick example. You can see nervous, we have the example sentence, we have pictures, and we have antonyms. So, variety of different ways of teaching vocabulary. Here are some more examples. Checking with situations and contexts. So which situations would make you nervous? Number 1, getting ready for bed. Would that make you nervous? Probably not. Number 2, reading a story in a library. By yourself, no. But maybe if you're reading aloud to a group of people, perhaps. Okay, number 3, an interview with a new boss. Maybe, yes, that could make you nervous. Number 4, ordering food in a restaurant. Probably not, but maybe if you're in a foreign country and you're speaking a different language, maybe. Number 5, micro-teaching on a TESOL course. Does that make you nervous? Well, I hope not, but possibly it does. Okay, so any other situations you can think of that make you nervous? Now, notice this final question, any other situations, is allowing students to personalize the meaning of the language. So students are going to give examples of situations when they were nervous, right? And this makes vocabulary very meaningful and memorable. It's not just matching with definitions or fill in the blanks. We're actually applying the words to our life and experiences. So always think about this with words and expressions, kind of using and matching these meanings with the learner's life experiences. Okay, we've got a couple more examples here. So checking with TPR, can you show me a mime or an action of nervous? And students might, show you about nervous. Again, this is very memorable. This helps students to remember. And then checking with a story and personalization. Can you tell me a story about a time you were nervous? Again, this is really using the student's own experiences. So you can see here lots of different ideas in the last few slides. Okay, so now let's go into the during stage. So when we are setting up activities, this is a good sequence. What we want to do first is, number one, show the materials, okay? Get attention and show the materials. Number two, explain the task or have a student read the instructions or questions, right? You may have the instructions on the PPT. That's a good way of setting up tasks. Okay, number three, provide model answers if needed. The teacher can give some examples, or you can do the first one together, or you can, maybe the teacher has something prepared as an example. Number four, ask checking questions, very important. Ask checking questions with your instructions. Number five, hand out the materials. Now, notice we don't hand out the materials first. When we have the attention of the whole class, that's when we give instructions and examples and checking questions, and then we hand out the materials. Now, this is generally the best way to do it. Occasionally, you do need to hand out the materials first, but often it's better to have all of the attention on the teacher to give the instructions, give the example answers, ask the checking questions before you then hand out the materials, because at that point students are going to be just looking at the materials. Number six, let the students listen, read, and do the task. Number seven, maybe students could compare their answers in pairs. Now, this is a good tip, right? Sometimes teachers just straight away ask the whole class and the whole class just shout all their answers, okay? But it's often a good idea to let students compare and share their answers. You know, they can correct each other, they can help each other, they can see examples from other students. So this is a good thing to do before you share with the whole class. So finally, number eight, students tell answers to the class. Perhaps choose at random. Now, often it's better just to choose specific students, right? So ask different students to share, you know, number one, number two, number three, or the different answers, rather than just having all of the students shouting at the same time, okay? So, yeah, think about that. These are some general tips and ideas for how to set up and run activities, especially for the during stage. Please take a note of this and look at it again before you do micro-teaching. Okay, we have some more examples here of different types of activities. These can be used in the pre and the during stage. The first one is an anticipation guide. You can see an example here. Anticipation guide is often true or false questions. It can be other types of questions like multiple choice. But the idea is that we give the questions in the pre-stage and students guess the answers. And then they read and listen in the during stage, and then they find out if their answers were correct. So that's why it builds anticipation. And it's an interesting way of organizing true or false questions. So yeah, in this case, I think true or false questions are okay, because we're using this as a way of bridging the pre and the during stage, and we're building motivation to read. The next example here is KWL chart. This is a very common type of graphic organizer used in all subjects. It has three sections, KWL. You can see K is what I want to know, and next, what I know is first, and then what I want to know is second. So these two columns students complete in the pre-stage, and then the final column, what I learned, students complete after listening or reading. So these are two common types of worksheets. You can find examples of these online if you want to see more examples. Okay, let's talk about checking gist now, general idea. So here's a question. What was the video about? This is not a good gist question. The answer is not clear. The question is too general, too broad. There's too many different ways of answering this question. So try to ask gist questions that have a clear and specific answer. Now remember, gist is general idea, right? So the general, like the main point. Okay, so here are some example gist questions. What did he want? Where did they go? What is the argument about? Who is this video for? Is the story real or fantasy? These are examples of gist questions. Now, obviously, depending on the type of text, the gist question will change. Different texts have different main ideas. But try to ask questions that have a clear and specific answer. So when students answer, you can know that they, have answered well. Okay. So what was the video about? This question is too broad. Some more ideas for checking gist. You can have students create a title. So you hide the title, for example, from the story or an article, and you have students create a title. You can also have students choose from some example titles, right? So you could give a list of example titles, students have to choose, or you can have them choosing a picture that matches with the article or with the story. These are good ways of checking gist, so I would suggest these could be used at the beginning of the during stage. Okay, another good thing is to personalize. This is text-to-self connections, which is one of the reading strategies we looked at earlier. There are different types of connections. We have text-to-text connections, comparing information in two texts. We have text-to-self connections, and then we also have text-to-world connections. So have a look at these questions. Which place do you want to visit? Which of these do you want to try? Which one was your favorite? How is your experience similar? These are all personalization questions. These are text to self, okay? So think about letting students use their opinions and ideas and experiences when it comes to the text. Okay, another thing you can do is localize. So in this case, you're going to localize the information to Korea. So do Korean people do this? Which Korean place is similar? Where can you see this in Korea? Which Korean special day is similar? Okay, so these questions are taking the content of the text and comparing them to places and things in Korea that the students may know. Okay, here's another idea. You can split the text. This is a jigsaw reading. If you have texts that have different sections, like a brochure or perhaps some kind of article that has different tips or different parts, you can split the text and give text to different students and have them read and compare and share and summarize and things like this together. Okay, TPR is also good, especially for young learners. You can start using this in the pre-stage. You can teach some actions with the vocabulary, and then you continue using the actions in the during stage with maybe a story or a song and doing the actions again. Okay, here's another tip. You can hide the video and just listen to the audio. This is often good, especially if the video gives away too much information and you want to do drawing or sequencing pictures, for example. You can hide the video and just play the audio. Or even another idea is you can hide the audio and just play the video and have students guess and predict about what they're going to hear. These are two kind of interesting ways of using the audio and video. So graphic organizers are also good for during stage activities. There are many different types of graphic organizers, so try to find one that matches with your text, okay? If it's a story, maybe sequencing. If it's some kind of information text, then maybe some kind of mind map or Venn diagram or summary worksheet could be good. Okay, you can also use the text with other examples to apply the information, give suggestions, or correct someone, okay? So for example, look at the first example here. We've got a brochure which is about summer activities for children. And then, so students are going to read the brochure, understand the main points and context, and then we show them an example family and we tell them, okay, these are their children, their age, what they are interested in, and then students have to use the content of the brochure to suggest places to visit to this kind of imaginary family. Okay, so this is very interesting because you're using the content of the brochure and applying that content by using some kind of fictional situation. Okay, the second example here is a resume. And so we listened to a job description. Now look at this resume. Is this person suitable for the job? What should they include in their resume for this job? So we learned about a job description, and now we have a resume, and we're going to use the job description and the resume to think about suggesting about jobs. Okay, also use visual materials, things like images, comic strips, webtoons, drawing, matching, sequencing, and so on. And in the during stage, think about this kind of sequence from general idea and gist to facts, to summary, to critical thinking, and then perhaps finishing with students' experiences, opinions, and evaluating. Now, you don't have to follow this exactly, okay? You may not be able to do all of these things, or even maybe in a slightly different order, but generally this gives you a good sequence for during stage. Okay, so for the end of the during stage, you could do something like a summary. So don't be too vague about a summary task. If you ask students to make a summary, give a clear task, clear guidelines and examples, perhaps give a worksheet or a format for students to use, for example, a graphic organizer, drawing, or bullet points. You can also use evaluating at the end of the during stage, so you can see some example questions here. Which one do you like and dislike? Which is the best part or the worst part? Do you agree or disagree? Is this true or not? And how would you change it, right? These are all evaluation questions. And also think about experiences and personalizing. So have you experienced this? What did you learn from this video or this article? How will this information change your life? What will you do differently in the future? And do you know somebody like this? Okay, so these questions are all to personalize the content of the text. And these still count as during stage activities because we're using the content of the text. Okay, so I hope this video has been useful, and I've given you lots of ideas about ways you can be more creative in your lesson planning and also in your materials selection and creation. So combine ideas, create something new, show your creativity. Try to have lots of variety. Try to have critical thinking, experiences, opinions, the students' lives and background knowledge. Try to incorporate all of these things into your lesson plans. Okay, thank you.